Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I have a special breakdown going over some of the most important data, taking us all the way back into our bear market. Once we saw this data flip negative, it was the exact moment Bitcoin reversed inside of its bear market, and for the first time in almost 3 years exactly, we have now seen this flip back to positive. This is a moment where I believe that as Bitcoin has rallied close to those all-time highs, many of the altcoins are starting to break out and do the same things. Outperformers are leading more than others. This is a much more explosive cycle than ever before. And so for today's video, I wanted to break down exactly what the altcoins are telling us, what the data of Bitcoin is telling us, because I firmly believe that we are getting very close to new all-time highs, and we're all about to make a significant amount of profit once the breakout ensues. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and we have a very important breakdown coming over and looking at the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. The Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is the oldest sort of trust and institutional corporation, I guess you could say, inside of crypto that's actively been accumulating Bitcoin. They've been accumulating a number of other altcoins since the last cycle, and they're really the first one that a lot of people think about. You know, now that we have the ETF approved, we're hearing about BlackRock. They've accumulated over $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, and now we've seen the big players stepping into the market. But we got to remember that this was the first one, and the data that it shows is actually reflecting a very important point we need to be talking about today. So guys, talking about this, whenever this is sitting above this middle line, it's showing that this is actually at a premium to Bitcoin. It's more expensive than just market buying Bitcoin, because this is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. They go out, they take all of the heavy risk of buying Bitcoin on the market, ooh, scary stuff, and then they hold all of that risk for you. And then that allows you to be able to invest with your 401k and things like that in an institutional manner. So it is a way to get exposure to Bitcoin, but sometimes this runs at a premium in the bull markets. But when we see this cross below the middle line and we see it go to a discount, this is where it's actually more undervalued than the price of Bitcoin. So there's periods where it's actually a better opportunity to buy this over Bitcoin. But if we notice that it was here in February of 2021 where Bitcoin actually crossed below that and went negative. So that was the Bitcoin Trust of Grayscale going negative, and that was right here that happened. Bitcoin had topped and it sold off at the end of the year, and this was really the first major pivot point that we saw for the bears before we went for that final lower low to end the cycle. But it was in that period where we saw this flip at a negative for really the first time that this data has been around. This only goes back to 2019, but we saw this went all the way down to about almost a 50% premium, 49% approximately. And ever since at the end of the year when Bitcoin bottomed, this has slowly been creeping all the way back up, and we've now equalized back at zero. I believe that as we've seen Bitcoin breaking out, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust has actually outperformed Bitcoin in the short term, and that's something that happens. I think the big picture, you know, in the last cycle, we noticed that the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust actually topped over here in the summer of the bull market. That would have been like peak hype with Doge and Elon Musk. But then we actually made a lower high at the end of the year, whereas Bitcoin, you know, spot Bitcoin, it actually went into a new all-time high. So there's periods where this is going to underperform, and then there's periods where it outperforms. Over the last couple months, this has been on an absolute tear and has actually outperformed the price of Bitcoin. So looking at this, there's going to be periods where this happens, and I think it's important that as we flipped, you know, back to an equilibrium inside of this data, it's most likely showing that we're at a point of reversing big picture. Because whenever this runs into a premium, and it's actually more expensive than the price of Bitcoin, which is kind of what we're seeing, you know, right here with this big breakout, it's becoming more expensive than the price of Bitcoin. I believe that that's going to be an early sign that Bitcoin is about to go into a new all-time high. There's a lot more confidence back in the market. People are willing to pay a premium to actually accumulate the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, you know, just because they want that exposure to Bitcoin. It's an early sign that Bitcoin itself is breaking out. And when we're looking at the price of Bitcoin, we come over here and we look at this, you know, same range that we've been in, considering, you know, I've been talking about this range for the last couple months. Ever since we entered here, we've been ping-ponging back and forth between support and resistance. We've had a couple false breakouts, you know, with the ETF. We had this false breakout. The ETF got approved. We had this false breakdown we instantly have regained support. So when it comes time to look for Bitcoin, we're literally just ping-ponging in the same range. Nothing has changed. We're now sitting inside of the mid-range of this consolidation. I don't think that, regardless of what scenario happens, this thing could pull back. It could come back down and retest this support. As long as we hold this as support, I think that the scenario is obvious that we'd end up retesting this prior resistance up here at about $44,000. However, guys, once again, we're just playing the same range. We're bullish above, bearish below. Now that we've reclaimed this support, it obviously shows that, there's enough buy support that we're still, basically looking at the same thing. If we were to break down and we were to continue to make lower lows, then we would have looked at this range as having already shifted. But now that we've already broke back within, it really shows that the market hasn't changed. And all this was the institution stealing all of your Bitcoin, as they love to do so well. When we're looking at this, I think it's important you understand this. Now that we've regained this prior range, we're looking at most likely just the same thing that we were talking about for the last couple months. Now, guys, coming over here, looking at the altcoin total market cap, there's a few different things that I want to point out. The first one is going to be the time frames. I think it's very, very important for everybody to understand the length of time that we spent in the last bear market, how long it took before we were at the point of reversing, and maybe what we could expect with this cycle. Because we know that the bear markets are going to look a little bit different. The price action is always going to vary. In the last cycle, we had a global pandemic and we had this massive shakeout. We're probably not going to have that happen this time. We could have a shakeout, but I just don't think that it's going to be quite as volatile. But with that being said, guys, it's the similarities in time that I think speak the most about where we're at in a cycle. And I think that as the price action may vary, it might do its own sort of thing to a varying extent. When we're looking at the time seems to be the most consistent factor each and every one of our bull markets. Looking at the peak low of the 2018 bear market to the peak low of the COVID capitulation, we're looking at about 454 days. From peak low of this bottom to peak low of this bottom. That's how long that we spent inside of that consolidation. And we had a pretty volatile sort of range that we built. About 200, almost a 3x from range low to range high. And that was, a level that we almost retested 2 different times. So we spent all of that time, almost, a year and a half, consolidating in that bottom. Eventually, once we got the big reversal, which was actually us breaking out of that range high at Ethereum, it was like $300 to $400. It was when we broke out of that and retested as support here, all of these areas, that was kind of the defining moment where we got the reversal. I ended up putting $200,000 into Ethereum at that point, bought a whole bunch of other altcoins I was watching because I knew that was the confirmation. We'd spent 400 plus days ranging in the side of this consolidation of the bear market bottom. Now that we had broken out, we were retesting it as new support. It just became very clear to me that this was going into a new all-time high. Now, when we're looking at this, from the bear market bottom to the point of us actually fully reversing, you're looking at like 650 days approximately. And that's what I think is really important because the time frames, basically taking 2 years from peak bottom to the point of us reversing that bottom and getting that big breakout into a new all-time high. It takes time to get this stuff, and we have to be patient. We have to understand it's definitely going to take some time. Now, when we're coming over here and looking at our current consolidation, I wanted to share with you guys, something we've talked a little bit about recently, which was this Wyckoff schematic, because that's the exact type of cycle bottom that we're seeing today, where we have these 2 sort of lower lows, and then we kind of consolidate here inside of the mid-range before we start that breakout and going into a new cycle. And in my opinion, it's really similar to even what we saw with ETH. The only difference would be ETH would be an example of a Wyckoff schematic version 1, where this is a Wyckoff schematic version 2, right? So we have 2 different versions of a Wyckoff that happened in each one of our cycle lows. And if we come back to that first cycle and I draw this one, you'll know a little bit more about what I mean. This is an example of the other Wyckoff, where we get this bottom, we range up, that would be here, we come back down, retest. Even though it doesn't make a lower low like this one does, it's still following that same sort of thing before we get the final spring, and that was the COVID capitulation. So a lot of these are going to follow Wyckoffs, and that's the beauty of crypto and understanding these chart patterns, is this is a major topping point and a reversing point. You can see this pattern at a cycle top, you can see the pattern at a cycle bottom. It's just easier to see it at a cycle bottom because it takes more time to develop, right? So when we're looking at these, nothing has really changed from each one of our cycles. We're pretty much looking at the exact same symmetry. The only difference was, this one didn't get a lower low like what that one did over at the COVID bottom. This one's holding better support. So when we're looking at this breakout that we just experienced right here, all we've really done is retested that prior range as support. That was what this little sell-off was us retesting that range high as new support. So when we're looking at this Wyckoff schematic, notice here that it says SOS. And this is the point where we're actually breaking out of the range high and before we're about to go into that reversal point. That's exactly where we're at right here. And I find it interesting that I've been drawing with you guys the parallels between the market structure from here and all the way back at the first cycle for ETH back in there. And it's not so much that I think that the price is 100% going to follow it exact, but when we're looking at a Wyckoff, they do follow each other because this is an exact sort of reversal pattern that we can, chart that many cycles are going to follow. So when we're looking at this reversal, no matter what the short-term reversal looks like the market structure can obviously vary. This thing could go into a bull pennant. It could be inside of this weird-looking descending triangle type thing before breaking bullish. It could do whatever it wants. The point we're making here is we just broke out of this giant bottom formation and we're now consolidating on that as support. Any time that we're spending on this range is an amazing opportunity to buy, get more crypto exposure. Considering even if we take more time to break out, this thing runs up to this level and then we get a more deeper consolidation like this. It might take a little bit more time than what this is just showing, but regardless, we should be more grateful for a lengthier cycle. We should be more happy for that because that's just a lengthier period of time that we can profit off altcoins going up, that we can profit off Bitcoin. The more stable foundation of support we build, the less that we just teleport straight into a new all-time high, the more likely that this cycle ends up being the most profitable one of all time. So when I'm looking at these, I see almost the same similarities. I don't see much of a difference at all. Looking at time, that's almost the same amount of time with the last cycle for Ethereum and the altcoins. You're looking at like 450 days from cycle low to cycle low, and then 650 days from us breaking out of the bear market and reversing. Where we're at right now, from cycle low to the ending of our correction most recently, it was about 481 days. So pretty damn close to that same threshold. And then where we're at right now is, just under 600 days. So we're not that far off from that last cycle. I think that we're going to end up following something similar. It doesn't quite have to go into a new all-time high quite as fast. But the point I'm trying to make here is how this is actually factoring in, how it's actually an example of a Wyckoff, and how we have had two examples of a Wyckoff in back-to-back cycles. It doesn't get much more easy to play the market than that. And I just think that as long as we're focusing on the long term, we're looking to, not panic sell in these periods, look to buy the long-term stuff and hold. I don't think you can really go wrong right now, considering this to me is the biggest macro reversal that we're going to see inside of the market, and this gives us all the confirmation in the world that we're about to be going into a brand new cycle. So guys, if you found value, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you guys want to see how I'm investing my money, anything I'm doing over the cycle, altcoins I'm looking at, ecosystems I'm buying, different low caps and things like that. Anything I do with my money, I post it inside of the Discord server. So if you guys want to be able to check that out, follow along with any of my picks, now's the most important time to do that, considering when we reverse, that's when all the profit sets in. And I always prefer to have everybody involved in my group before that happens, because once the profit rolls in, a lot of the stuff gets overvalued. And then we have to look for brand new opportunities. People end up getting priced out. So you're just better off getting in there now, seeing exactly what I'm looking at long term. So if you guys do want to check that out, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. It's a one-time payment, lifetime access. You'll always have access to my group, and you'll be able to see anything I'm doing with my money long term, even if I end up taking profits on crypto and venturing inside of the stock market and other things like that. Thank you all so much for the support once again. I love you, I appreciate you, and I really can't wait to see this market fully reverse, because I'm telling you guys right now, makes me excited, because I know that where I was at in the last cycle and how much money I made, and now what we're going to be able to do with this one being the institutional cycle, you guys will be able to make more money than I made in the last cycle, and you're probably going to be able to start out with a lot less, in my opinion. I think that you're really going to be able to do that, and it's just my honor to be able to watch you guys do that and help you guys along the process. So anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, and with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.